graduated from Ohio University and then got his master's degree at Cranbrook
Academy of Art.
Academy of Art. And then came to Albuquerque, and then from 1962 to 1982, no, I guess they said 1978, my dates sit in my head here. He was in business with a gentleman named Pacheco and Graham Architects. They had their office there on Lomas, where there's a very stylized monster or some kind.
Oh, the servant.
There you go, the servant, yeah. So it's
Yeah.
one look. But then, what's more interesting to me is that after their partnership ended, Chan continued on his own and bought the Brooks studio building, which is right next to
Firestone?
right next to Firestone. It's just west of it. A wonderful building. And the story is, and he'll confirm it for me because he told me this some time ago. When he moved in, the building was apparently completely empty, except that you have to have a ladder to see it. There was a storeroom, a small storeroom of some kind that had a very deep, high-level shelf that was in the storeroom. So far, so good, Jim? So he got up there and looked deep into this, and the whole photographic negative collection of Brooks Studio was still there. And so he donated it to the Albuquerque Museum. And so the photo archive of the Albuquerque Museum now has that collection. It's a really valuable collection. Chan and his wife Tamara left Albuquerque in 1990 and went back to Staten Island, New York, where Tamara was going to go to school. And they ended up staying there. And Chan got very involved with various activities involving architecture and so on in Staten Island. And it worked out well for him. But then he was wise and came back to Albuquerque 2011. So he's been back here for about, what would that be, 7 years? Something like that. So with any luck here, we're going to see what we've got.
Keep going.
The history of the downtown neighborhoods really starts with the coming of the railroad in 1880 and the establishment of a new town site east of the depot. A horse-bound trolley running down Railroad Avenue, later Central, linked Old Town with the new town. The railroad's New Mexico Town Company planted a regular grid of blocks in 1880 at the southern edge of downtown, where the neighborhood is known as the original town site. A well-known landowner named Jose Leandro Guerra followed suit the following year when he laid out his own addition between 11th and 16th Street as a Human Highland addition, east of the tracks, which it grew as the first fashionable neighborhood. The downtown neighborhoods at that time grew only slowly. By the turn of the century, with the Human Highlands nearly filled with houses, the downtown neighborhood area emerged as the city's most fashionable neighborhood. New developers like MP Stan subdivided the remaining and creating the 8th and Forester Streets. This map shows the extent of the Downtown Neighborhoods Association. The 5 historic districts are shaded in blue. The 4th Ward and 8th Street Forester historic districts are also overlay zones with stricter restrictions and building modifications. Anna Mueller I put Anna on next because this is more or less of a continuation of the history. And you'll find it, this is sort of her writing, which I have credited, of course. Anna Mueller owned the Kate Nichols Chavez house for the past 43 years. During that time, she has made a huge contribution to Albuquerque businesses and Albuquerque's downtown. Along with architect Anton Predock, she was a founding member of the Downtown Neighborhoods Association. And I just got a list this afternoon of the rest of the rest of the founders of the association. I appreciate that very much. Homes that are being chopped, let's see. Under her leadership, they reacted to new zoning ordinances that had at one time zoned most of the DMA area as office space. And I remember when I lived here before, that was going to be the big development. Homes were being chopped up into units that became slums. Hannah and Nadine, they got city planners to begin work on what became the first sector development plan. It included provisions for historic designations and included information for the owners who repaired and restored their homes. One serious issue that faced the neighborhood was the proposed closure of Lew Wallace Elementary School in the 1970s.
Now try it again.
Okay. The school board, wow, sounds good. I'm not breaking. The school board had told the DNA that it was closing the school, but Anna and the DNA worked for 10 years and got the school reopened. Today it's one of the best elementary schools in the city. Anna Muir was also instrumental in getting the downtown Grove Market established in Robinson Park and the biannual Mother's Day home tours. She also led the DNA in overseeing the infill and development of the area, welcoming new projects such as the Palms redevelopment and opposing others such as a private jail was subject to a RICO, a racketeering investigation that had been overlooked by city officials. This Tudor Revival House was designed in 1908-09 by Kate Nichols Chavez, wife of Waldo Chavez, who was New Mexico's first superintendent of schools. She was also the daughter of an architect builder. The two-story brick house is capped by a cross gable to the south and a gable door to the north. One of the reasons I chose this date for the talk is to give the chance to sign up the following 2 days to enjoy the local Mother's Day home tour. We have 9 houses on the tour, and only one of them has been on the tour before. I think it's one of the best tours we've ever had. There's some real excitement to be had in this tour. Next. The J.H. Coons House, listed on both the state and national register historic places. In this case, it's unfortunate that the house is titled for the first owner, as the house was owned by Judge Clayton Pearl, architect, who made wonderful changes to the interior and built additions to the house, which would be best described as modern, yet in keeping with the historic details of the construction. And I think it's just, every time I go in there, it's just a delight, because you see the Coons house, you see Pearl's wonderful, sensitive additions, and Bob Newhouse is just the top person to own that house. He couldn't be better. I'm going to give this talk, end this talk with more details on George Pearl, but at this location, you can go and see some of his creative design abilities. This is the space in the back of the house. He is working with space, texture, and materials that give you a sense of closure and expectation. In Sarah Mancini's words, quote, The house is a 1932 classic Toroni adobe home built by hand with thick adobe walls, wooden beams, ceilings, and brick floors. The only improvement we have made in the house since we bought it are in the bathroom area. We removed a purple shag carpet and installed a smaller vanity to give the space more cramped in the bathroom. We have also upgraded the windows, but we were intentional to keep the same look as the original windows. We plan to improve the kitchen, for now we are choosing to focus on the backyard, which we will construct a pergola and a new adobe wall at the end of our driveway. We love where we live. We enjoy our neighbors by name and love all of the restaurants and coffee shops that are local. We love walking to Old Town. We love the history and personality of our home. John Anderson has lived in this neighborhood for over 40 years. He's owned the adjacent property and was designated as non-contributing when the city established the 4th Ward Historic District. Along with his wife, Laura Dabby, they have had the property demolished and then designed and built this house at 908 Roma. The exterior design is based on a preeminent bungalow style of the neighborhood. The interior of the house features an open steel stairway extending from the basement to the 2nd floor and a 27-foot high ceiling. This is certainly one of the most outstanding houses that we've ever had on a house tour. Originally from Rockford, Illinois, Anderson moved to Albuquerque in 1970 to attend UNM's School of Architecture. A year later, he met his future wife, Laura, and they purchased their first home in 1976. For years, he's been racking up awards in spectacular residential commercial projects in Albuquerque and across the country with his clean, lime, glass, steel structures. What an exciting house. I've been in a number of houses, including those by Frank Lloyd Wright and Bruce Goff, but boy, this one competes with any of them. It's just a top-grade super house. In Laura Dabby's words, we love living in the downtown neighborhood. We bought our first house on Luna Boulevard in 1976 and raised both of our kids in that house. I taught youth history for 25 years at Albuquerque High School, and both of our kids graduated there. John worked at Anton Predok office on 12th Street for 12 years. He opened his own architecture office at 912 Roma in 1991. When we decided to build our house, we didn't want to live anywhere else. We love the urban lifestyle, the ability to walk anywhere with ease and access to downtown and the Bosque. We demolished a rental house on Roma that we had owned for 30 years and built a new house on that site. Rosalie Doodle was the authority on plants in her day. She authored Southwest Gardening in 1953 and started the Albuquerque Garden Club, hosted a radio program on gardening. The house is Spanish Mediterranean style with arched windows and doors. The present owner spent 6 years restoring the house, redoing the electrical system, restoring the hardwood floors, restuccoing, and re-roofing. Chris Lemon calls this house Casa Grande. It's one of 4 on the property that belonged to a local family for several generations. What is now Tigray Park was the original architectural field and orchard for old Albuquerque. Casa Grande dates from the mid-1880s and became its life as a one-room house. As is the tradition, if a member of the family married and preferred to stay on the property, Another mudroom was added to, and with a doorway that was to a private, and it was their private entrance. Notable are the bigots in the large bedroom. They were built in a tradition that was only used in the mid-1880s, 1800s. The large plank floors in the main room are actually a new floor. Remnants of the original floor are several inches beneath. On one occasion, the door frame and a door and its frame were found plastered over, and we have used them now on the tower. This slide shows the portal and the tower that was added during the renovation to help direct exposure of the summer sun. The tower is a colonial feature that was popularized in the 1990s by architect John Graham, houses the electrical cooling system. 610 and 612 17th Street are typical examples of the Watson State Historic District. It's a district of modest, finely crafted homes in the Spanish Pueblo Revival style, and is significant both for its architecture and its place in the history of Albuquerque's growth and change. Leon Watson came to Albuquerque from depression-related business failure in Florida about 1929. By 1941, he had gained knowledge about remodeling and adobe. He planned the houses of the Chacon edition for an FHA loan market of middle to lower income families, but found that the FHA employees themselves were among the first purchasers. He pre-sold many houses offering 3 and 4 bedroom building plans. Cost of the finished house ranged from $2,700 to $4,800. I think it was a buy at the time even. The Watson Historic District is one of the most interesting places to drive and visit, with its stuccoed houses and mature landscaping. This is by the owner, and I don't have his name down on this. Lori and I bought our house at 1710 Old Town Road in the summer of 2014 and loved it, both for our neighborhood, for our house and our neighborhood. Apart from some landscaping, we haven't done much of home improvements but I did build a couple of decks in the courtyards, and we recently put hardwood flooring in the great room. As far as the history goes, we understand that the original structure was built in the 1850s, and that part of the house consisted of 3 front rooms, which were bedrooms. At some point, the size of the house was more than doubled by addition what is now the kitchen and utility room office. I've seen an early 20th century sandboard map that the addition was already in existence. At that point, the footprint of the house was an inverted L shape. The subsequent owner added a Kiva-style great room in the middle of the L by building a long, curving wall that encloses what is now the largest room in the house. The room was added in 1971. That sounds fascinating. I'm looking forward to seeing what the great room looks like. Follows the homes located in the 4th Ward Historic District. Kim Linton tells a story that she got lost driving around Albuquerque's downtown area and discovered this grand prairie-style house for sale. The Lintons have proved to be ideal owners of the house, bringing back a standard of quality in keeping with the 1908-09 design. It's the architect Henry Trost of Trost & Trost Architects. Legend has it that the concrete foundation was poured on New Year's Eve day in 1908. The house has a long history connected with former owners, one being the first Postmaster General of Albuquerque. Early in the 1940s, owners of the house, the Seligmans, escaped Nazi Germany After selling as many personal valuables, including a Rembrandt painting, inside their coats and then acting as if they were going for a walk. Their escape was successful. In the 1950s, a picture of that painting appeared in the newspaper advertising as a fundraiser for the Albuquerque synagogue. Designed by architect Henry C. Trost, the Berthold Spitz House is one of the best examples of prairie style in Albuquerque. Based in El Paso, Trost & Trost were a major firm in the Southwest, designing several of the large buildings in Albuquerque. Berthold Spitz was the first occupant of the house, was postmaster from 1921 to 1933. As you may know, I give a lecture on Trost & Trost for the Albuquerque Foundation last year, and it was a lot of fun. The living room, dining room space is full of architectural detail. The Lindens have done a remarkable job of furnishing the space with period furniture. The dining space is really an extension of the living room. This house was built for Solomon Benjamin, a partner in the dry goods firm of Willard and Benjamin. The classic revival brick house was the childhood home of John F. Sims, Jr., later governor of New Mexico, and his brother Albert G. Sims II, who was a regent at the University of New Mexico. In 1934, Anne Sims sold a house to G.L. Alderman, a prominent real estate man who was also active in civic affairs. Tom and Dwight moved into the McAfee house in 1986. They have observed a lot of changes in the DNA over the years. There was a loss of residential housing along Lomas Tierras and Kent Avenue. They applaud the transformation of the Lowe's store from gritty to nice. They enjoy the location of the house where they're able to walk to Old Town, the museums, the library, and downtown. In Dwight's words, our house was built in 1904 by Amasa B. and Michael McAfee. It is a blend of Queen Anne and Prairie styles with a round bay and wraparound porch. It has the last penitentiary-made brick sidewalk in the neighborhood, and probably in Albuquerque too. The interior is finished with fine wood details, original all except for the kitchen and baths. McAfee was the president of the McAfee Company, the Santa Barbara and Pole Company, and the Benham Indian Treasury. Primarily, he was a timber merchant, harvesting and providing ties for the AT&S Railroad, first from the Sangre de Cristos and later from the Zuni Mountains. When he founded the mill town of McAfee, south of Gallup, he died on September 3rd, 1929, aboard the City of San Francisco, the first commercial airline crash in the United States. Dwight is currently the state secretary for the National Association of Watch and Clock Collectors. His interest in clocks and making stained glass. He considers himself one of the caretakers of the house and has learned many repair skills, such as window ropes, weights, lath, and plaster. In Tom's words, I am pursuing my first art, working in a studio that was once upstairs sleeping porch. Gardening has always been a part of my life, and it has been a pleasure to work a former gravel parking lot into an area oasis in the city. Our hope is we can leave this home in better condition than we found it, so it can last another 100 years. Back in 2010, James and Jenny moved from Los Alamos to Albuquerque. They were planning to buy land and buy a new house, but they drove around downtown and saw this beautiful older house. So instead of to build new, they purchased a house on 303 12th Street. They've been busy with landscaping and have worked on the interior to restore some of the character the original builders seemed to have in mind. A white picket fence around the front was added along with dock shutters to accentuate the windows. Named for John Robertson, who owned the house in 1919 and 1962, he was the president of the Farr Sheep Company and the Sanitary Sheep Board. The house is basically a two-story cube with fine, refined details on the porch and in the interior as well. It is one of the few Albuquerque houses that features Greek revival elements. Houses listed on the 8th Street Forester. Rick grew up in Forester Avenue at 1301 north of Mountain, attended St. Mary's School, graduated from Albuquerque High School. Bernadette is also from Albuquerque. She graduated from Highland High School. Both Rick and Bernadette have little family history, have a great family history in New Mexico. Rick's parents and Robert and Stella were born and raised in Algodones, just north of Bernalillo. Bernadette's parents, Carlos Martinez and Aurora Martinez, were from Pintada, north of Fort Sumner, eastern New Mexico. In Rick's words, we were told it was a major upgrade of the house by 1970s by the Northerners. It included electrical work, duct work, and opening of the porch. Our recent renovation included restoring the ceiling in the dining room to its original height, which exposed the wonderful arch shown in the picture. We also removed the ceiling rafters in the living room, which gave the room a sense of space. Bernadette shared some of the photographs of her relatives. Salome Martinez, Bernadette's great-grandfather, was a large landowner and sheep rancher, along with his wife, Sunanita. Went with that one a couple times. He also was a territorial legislator in the Constitutional Convention of 1910. Carlos Martinez, Bernadette's father, was born and raised in Pintada. When he came back from serving in the Navy in World War II in the Philippines, he made his home in Santa Fe and married Aurora Martina Romero in 1952. They raised 5 children in Albuquerque. Carlos passed away in 2013. A wedding picture of Bernadette's great-grandparents, Salome and Sabanita Martinez. Salome was a politician, and Sabanita ran the ranch in Pinata, New Mexico. 1011 Forester was built by the Toulouse family in 1904. Shown in the picture, he was a prominent Albuquerque attorney. The Santalinas home is a wonderful example of typical New Mexico adobe style, with large vigas, framing the ceiling, carved wood throughout, stone fireplaces, and cabinets in bright colors. It is a warm, personal place, filled with family photographs, collections of New Mexico tin works and ceramics. The house started out as a typical 2-bedroom house built by Leland Bunch in 1941. 2 additions, one in the front and one on the west side, transformed the house into a large 4-bedroom home. The additions have skylights between the buildings and includes a light into the various areas of the house. Millie Santillanes was a major force for Albuquerque and Spanish American cultures. She is credited as giving the Tigway Park the Museum for Art and History, located in Old Town. Under Martin Chavez, she served 2 terms as city clerk and director of cultural affairs. She was also a founder of the Mexico Hispanic Cultural Preservation League, and numerous other achievements. The house at 1607 Granite retains many aspects of Millie and her life. 3 large religious sculptures inhabit the patio of the house: San Isidro, San Miguel Archangel, San Francis Xavier. For many years, Vidal Santillanes was a part of the group of Old Town's Felipe de Neri Catholic Church that staged religious parades on Church Founders Day, although the church still celebrates that event every year with a parade. They no longer use these figures. St. Michael Archangel was created by architect Richard Vieira of Las Vegas, New Mexico, sheet metal, San Isidro, and a wood carving, and its St. Francis Xavier is made out of fiberglass. Uma Sandoval is a retired modern dancer. Her father was in the diplomatic service. Her childhood was spent in many countries, including Mexico, Chile, and Argentina. She attended grade school at Harvard Boarding School for Girls and recalls the tight control imposed by the staff, and her stories is wondrous. She owned the house at 923 for a number of years, but just recently moved into the house in 2013 after having it extensively renovated. Uma's house was built in 1912 and had at least 5 owners. She had painted the walls in strong colors to display her extensive collection of art. This is next one. In Diane's words, I moved into this house 26 years ago. It was very dirty. I replaced the windows, the restoration glass, and added some millboard. There was no toilet inside. The large tree in front were planted by Mary Clyde Tingley. I wanted to keep them there, but the city wants them removed. I always wanted to live in this area. It's a good community and I enjoy walking downtown. The house has a ghost. She is my older housekeeper and babysitter. She knocks 3 times and I answer with 1 knock. This house is located directly across the street from our house when we moved back to Albuquerque in 2011. I thought it was abandoned by 2013. Something happened. It was Claire Sandrin, an independent contractor who works as a costumer in New Mexico's film industry. After she bought the house, it was transformed from a disaster to delight. In Claire's words, there's a garage for the house on 8th Street. The garage was built about 1915, 1920, was an addition put on in the 40s, and it was upgraded in the 70s. The lot was split off sometime, I don't know when. I found the house when I was out walking. It was the littlest, ugliest house you could remember. I thought, you know, it's gotta be cheap. The plumbing was outside the walls. My father, the designer builder who rehabbed the house, was horrified when he saw the condition of the place. But he did a wonderful job in the rebuilding. This house was built by J.J. Weggs, the general contractor. The president of the Mexico Gas Company had either had the house built or he purchased it and kept it as a rental for several years. Mary remembers a backyard member telling her that when Reyes Lopez Chiarina was renting the house, he saw 30 men coming out of the basement. At that time, the backyard had a short fence. And all that went on here was easily visible from the cottonwood, which was a tree house was built by the 2 boys who lived there. The tree is one of the few survivors of the past. It is on a acequia ditch that ran from Rio Grande through the irrigated fields south side of Albuquerque. The tree has also survived 2 automobile crashes. The house is a mission-style building built in 1923, and it is listed on the National Register of Historic Places. Mary's house is filled with family photographs and artifacts. This is the studio portrait of Mary's parental grandparents, Tomas and Emilia Baccia. I'm going to end the talk with stories of George Clayton Pearl and Anton Predock, 2 exceptional architects who lived in the DNA. Incredibly, they lived across the street from each other on 12th Street. George Carr bought the J.H. Kuhn House in 1976 and made significant changes and additions that harmonized with the historic character of the original design. Page ahead. Anton Predock bought the commercial building across the street, and sometime after he established his architectural practice in 1967, it became both his office and his living space. In 1962, I worked for George Pearl as an architectural intern in the firm of Ferguson, Stevens, Mallory, and Pearl, now SMPC Architects. George's manner and his approach to design made a deep impression on me. Pearl spent 40 years as a principal designer for the firm, and I'm sure that the growth of the firm was a response to the design quality that George Pearl provided. He designed a long list of projects that included the main public library, and my favorite, the restoration of John Gombean's Zimmerman Library at UNM. He received many awards, including in 1996 an honorary degree from UNM. And I have his date of death on the other copy. I think George is dead. I am deeply impressed with the contribution Pearl made to the field of historic preservation. He was a co-founder with me of the Albuquerque Conservation Association and co-founder of the Mexico Architectural Foundation. Anton Predock is the only New Mexico architect who has achieved a national practice with projects located all over the country and an international project with projects located in France, Canada, Republic of China. I knew Anton, then called Tony, back in 1969 when he was designing and then working on the La Luz Community Complex. I spent an afternoon with him laying adobe bricks on one of the houses. La Luz was a brilliant project, both in its concept and design, and it received broad publicity. In the 1990s, he set up a branch office in Venice, California, and started receiving commissions from various locations, including those in Wyoming, Texas, Florida, Arizona, and a Walt Disney Hotel in France. In 2006, Predock received an American Institute of Architects Gold Medal. The AI Gold Medal is the highest award conferred by, quote, the National AIA Board of Directors in recognition of the significant body of work of lasting influence on theory and practice of architecture, close quote. In receiving this award, he joins a significant group of architects, including Thomas Jefferson, posthumous, Frank Lloyd Wright in 1949, and Le Corbusier in 1961. At this point in his career, Predock has made 2 significant contributions to the University of New Mexico. First, to the School of Architecture and Planning, they are creating the Predock Center for design and research in Predoc's former residence and office on 12th Street. The second was to the UNM Center for Southwest Research, who received its 2- and 3-dimensional archives, some of which will be displayed at a rotating basis at the Predoc Center. Finally, for this talk, I would like to make one point. I still think that the erecting the street walls in front of those 2 houses on 12th Street is one of the worst designs Anton ever made. It looks like the walls can be grandfathered in with this change in ownership. But I am willing to accept them as a part of this grand, wonderful education facility that will enhance our neighborhood and be a positive contributor to the DNA for years to come. Thank you, Anton Predoc, and thank you for attending my talk.